Hi, I'm SS, and this is a basic guide to speedrunning Hades. It will cover mirror and heat settings, aspect and build choice, and some things you can do to optimize your time. It won't be exhaustive, but the description will have links to more advanced guides, so it should be a good jumping off point for any beginner. This guide will assume you've cleared a few runs, can comfortably kill Hades on 0 heat, and have some basic game knowledge. You should also have most of the mirror upgrades, keepsakes, and weapon aspects unlocked and maxed out. If you don't, and you're on PC, speedrun.com has a maxed out save file as well as a guide to installing it. Both are linked in the description. We'll be getting set up in a moment, but first, let's quickly talk about the available speedrunning categories. The category this guide will focus on is any heat, where your goal is to escape once using any mirror options, heat settings, or aspect as fast as possible. By default, any heat is timed using the in-game timer, or IGT, which you can turn on in the game's settings, but the leaderboard also tracks real-time, or RTA. IGT pauses during the pause screen, in-game menus, and in certain rooms which we'll talk about later, while RTA does not stop at any point during the run. Multi-run categories such as 1 weapon only, 3 weapons, and all weapons only track RTA. IGT and RTA each have their own optimizations, but otherwise their gameplay is very similar. If you want to submit to the leaderboards, you'll need to record your full run, and you'll want to check the category rules on the game's speedrun.com page, linked in the description. Now, let's get started. First of all, we'll be looking at the mirror. Most of these options are always the same for speed, so here's a good starting setup. You can choose between Infernal or Stygian Soul based on your preference, and once you're comfortable, you'll want to switch from Thick Skin to High Confidence. Certain options will also change based on build, which will be noted later. You can experiment once you're more experienced, but this should be good enough to use for now. Second, we'll be looking at the Pact of Punishment. You'll want to turn on Extreme Measures 2, which makes the learning fight faster by more tightly grouping the heads, and Forced Overtime, which makes enemies spawn in faster. Tight Deadline removes the survival rooms in Tartarus, so turn it on if you're playing for RTA, but leave it off if you're playing for IGT. Finally, we'll always be using Meg's companion, Batty. We'll cover how and when to use it in a later section. Now let's move on to aspect choice and what boons you'll be using. Before we look at the individual builds, it's worth understanding the concept of a god pool. Initially, you'll be offered gods at random out of the main 8. Every time you pick one up, it's added to an invisible pool of gods, until your pool consists of 4. Then, you'll stop seeing new gods, and will only be offered those in your pool. When you're offered gods as room rewards, consider which ones contribute to the build you're shooting for, and whether you have room for them in your pool. The only gods that are offered regardless of this pool system are Chaos and Hermes. Which bonuses you want from Chaos, if any, will depend on your build, but let's cover Hermes now. You'll normally get 2 boons from Hermes in each run. His boons have a huge impact on every build, and there are several specific boons you'll want from him. Greatest Reflex is a good option for weapons that mainly use dash strikes. It's great for mobility and can be a huge damage boost, especially at higher rarities. Rush Delivery gives a huge damage bonus if you combine it with Hyper Sprint, so you can always take Hyper Sprint to your first Hermes and keep an eye out for Rush Delivery. Quick Reload dislodges your cast from enemies faster, so it's great for any build where a cast that can lodge is your primary source of damage. Now, let's talk about builds. What build is best will depend on what aspect you're playing. This guide will list the aspect the runners normally use for each weapon, but if you're not a fan of any of these, don't worry. Every aspect has been played to some extent, and you can use whatever you like. There's less information out there for the slower aspects, so you'll have to ask around more for help playing them, but you'll always get the best results playing something you enjoy. The fastest aspect of the sword is Nemesis. Your central combo will be to open with your special, dash strike until your buff runs out, and repeat. It can be hard to get used to, so practice on Skelly and make sure to watch runs on the leaderboard for an idea of what it should look like. The most consistent build is Splash Nem. You'll start with Poseidon's Keepsake for Tidal Dash, then look for Artemis or Aphrodite's attack, Hunter's Mark, and dash strike bonuses from Chaos. Another option is the Crit build, where you'll start with Artemis' attack instead and go for Aphrodite's special and Heart Duo boon. Hunter's Mark, Chaos bonuses, and the Zeus Aphrodite duo boon Smoldering Air are extremely useful on this build as well. Finally, there's Merciful End. You'll start with Ares' Keepsake and take his attack at rare or better rarity. Then, look for Athena's special, the Merciful End duo boon, and her dash. Impending Doom is very important to look for, as it can more than double Doom's damage. ME is inconsistent and can thus be difficult to get faster times with, but the fact it doesn't rely on a weapon's base damage means it can be used on a lot of different aspects. All of these builds benefit massively from the double edge hammer, so look out for it. Avoid Flurry Slash, Cursed Slash, World Splitter, and Dash Nova. The fastest aspect of the spear is Achilles. You'll want to quickly double tap your special between dash strikes to keep your buff up. You'll mainly be using the buffed attack, but your buffed cast can deal great damage even if you don't have cast boon, so be sure to take advantage of it. You can also use charged specials for mobility. You'll start with Poseidon's Keepsake and take Tidal Dash, then take Artemis or Zeus for their attack, whichever appears first. If you got Zeus, you'll want to aim for Static Discharge, Zeus's Aid, and the legendary boon Splitting Bolt. If you got Artemis, you'll want to aim for Ares' Cast and the duo boon Hunting Blades. The Flurry Jab Hammer is essential to both builds, and you'll want to use the Infernal Soul Mirror option. There's a lot to dig into about this aspect, so be sure to check out World Record Holder 185's excellent written guide in the description. The fastest aspect of the shield is Beowulf. You'll be using your dash strike to kill smaller enemies, and your empowered bull rush for the bigger ones. Remember that you can start charging it by holding attack after a dash strike, and that you can load your cast while charging. You'll also want to remap your cast to a shoulder button so you can use it quicker. A few different casts can work, but usually you'll start with Poseidon's Keepsake and take Flood Flare, making sure to get plenty of palms and ideally cast bonuses from Chaos or Wells. Then, look for Artemis' attack, or her special, for the Mirage Shot duo boon. The Charged Shot Hammer is by far the best choice. You'll need Infernal Soul on the mirror, and High Confidence and God's Legacy will also help a lot. For more information on how the aspect is played, be sure to read the Beowulf Guide by Papertronics, linked in the description. The most popular aspect of the bow is Hera. You'll want to use low charged shots to get your casts out as quickly as possible. Load enough casts to burst down enemies in one go, then pick them up and repeat. Again, remember you can load casts while charging a shot, and that you'll probably want to remap your cast button. You'll start with Aphrodite's Keepsake and take Crush Shot, with as many Palms and Chaos buffs as possible. Then, shoot for Artemis' attack and Poseidon's special from Mirage Shot, as well as Snowburst and Ravenous Will from Demeter. Triple Shot and Flurry Shot are both great hammers, depending on your preference, and you'll need to use Infernal Soul on the mirror. For more detail on how to build and play the aspect, there's a great guide by Croven and Seagull, linked in the description. Rama has also seen some use lately, including an impressive unmodded world record by ocaml. It's a lot more advanced, so we won't be covering its usage here, but it has a lot of potential. The fastest aspect of the fists is Demeter, which uses the same merciful end build as Nemesis. When you don't have the build yet, your main combo will be dash strike into dash upper, with the addition of your cast or another dash strike for bigger enemies. Once you have the duo and Athena's dash, switch to just holding down your attack and dashing back and forth to apply doom as much as possible. It's an easy weapon to play and a good choice for beginners. Breaching Cross is the best hammer, though it's not essential. Explosive Upper is also great, but you should avoid Heavy Knuckle and Rush Kick. Finally, the Rail. Eris is one of the best aspects overall, and a great choice to start out on. You'll use your special while reloading, dash strike repeatedly on enemies at close range, then stand in each special as it lands to get your damage buff. Start with Zeus's Keepsake and take his attack, then look for Static Discharge from Zeus as a primary damage source, Tidal Dash from Poseidon, and any damage boosting special, preferably Artemis or Aphrodite. Rocket Bomb is the best hammer, but isn't required. Cluster Bomb is also a good option. Its damage penalty doesn't apply when you also have Rocket Bomb, resulting in the extremely powerful combo we call Clockets. For much more info on the aspect, be sure to read Lily's Eris guide, linked in the description. Hestia has also seen a surge in usage recently, but it's another more advanced aspect that we won't be covering in detail. And that's it for the builds. If you're not sure how to get any of the boons we covered, be sure to check the in-game codex. If you're interested in any other aspects, Trash Lapras is working on a list of the builds for every aspect, so you can check the description to see if any are listed there that you want to try. If you want, you can do a run right now with whatever build you've chosen and see what results you get. But aside from having a good build, there are some other things you'll need to keep in mind to start going faster, so now, let's look at improving your time. We'll start with room choice. Each biome in the game has a fixed number of chambers, followed by the end shop and boss. Tartarus is 12 chambers, Asphodel is 6, Elysium is 8, and 6 is variable depending on the sack's placement. Therefore, since all chambers occupy one space, you want to try and take the rooms you're offered that will be fastest. The rooms you should prioritize are mid-shop, mid-boss, chaos gates, and story rooms, those being Sisyphus, Eurydice, and Patroclus, who pause in-game time. Most of these can only show up once per biome. The main exception is mid-boss, which can be offered twice in Elysium or 3 times in other biomes, and is therefore a lower priority than other free rooms. Aside from free rooms, you should also prioritize elite rooms marked with skulls. These only spawn armored enemies, which spawn in smaller numbers, and therefore they'll be quicker on average. Trials also spawn armored enemies, but do so in higher numbers than usual, so they're slower than other rooms, and should be avoided. In Styx, you'll always want to take the mini-boss doors first. The sack can show up as soon as the second tunnel, with about 54% odds, but if you're unlucky it can show up as late as the 5th. There are also free rooms out of your control that can appear randomly in any non-mid-shop, mid-boss or story room. These include Survival Room, which pauses in-game time and appears a maximum of once in Tartarus, Fountains, which can appear a maximum of once per biome, and Thanatos, who pauses in-game time and appears a maximum of once per run. With that covered, let's talk about getting more out of your build. Especially in Elysium onwards, your build having strong damage becomes extremely important. Using good boons goes a long way, but it also helps to understand what scaling options will help your boons go further into the late game. The main sources of scaling that builds tend to use are Poms, Well items, Chaos, Hermes, and any tier 2 boons unlocked by your cores. How much a build gains from each of these varies, but generally speaking, crit builds rely on Chaos and Hermes, cast builds rely on Poms, Chaos, and Well items, Merciful End relies on the tier 2 Ares boon Impending Doom, as well as Poms and Hermes, and Zeus builds like those on Eris and Achilles rely on his tier 2 boon Static Discharge, his legendary boon Splitting Bolt, Poms, and Hermes. Exactly how you should be using each of these scaling options will be explained in each weapon's individual guide. You'll also usually have room in your pool for 1 or 2 extra gods that aren't a primary part of your build. The most important thing here is just to avoid taking anything that will interfere with your build. Examples of stuff to avoid include filling slots you need, like taking Thunder Dash when you're building towards Merciful End, opening duos you don't want, like by taking Heartbreak Flourish on Beowulf, which will lower your chances of getting Mirage Shot, opening tier 2s other than those you need, such as taking a call when you still need boons from Hermes, or even just taking a lot of boons of the Pommable when you need the Poms for something else. There's a reference list of unpommable boons in the community Discord, which is the top link in the description, and if you want to check whether a boon unlocks anything, you can just look in the codex. Once you're done with the core parts of your build, the best calls are Zeus and Dionysus, as well as the Hades call you get from the Sigil of the Dead keepsake. If you have a call other than Hades, the best keepsakes to use at this point are the Bone Hourglass if your build can benefit from well items, and the Coin Purse or Evergreen Acorn if it can't. Now for the last of the main optimizations. Clearing rooms efficiently is one of the main things you'll be working on as you head for more optimized times. It's a complex topic, so this will only be a very basic explanation. Non-mini boss rooms will start with some enemies already spawned in. Once you kill every enemy in the first wave, you'll want to move to a corner, ideally near the exit or entrance of the room. Enemies will usually only spawn on screen, so this will limit the space in which they spawn, making them more grouped together and quicker to kill. There's a useful guide by BIGP linked in the description that shows good routes for each room. There are up to 3 waves in a room. Once you've cleared them all, it's usually worth checking any wells of Charon you see. They can give useful items including Lights of Ixion, which will force a Chaos Gate to appear in the next room. If you're playing for in-game time, you can then pause while you decide which door to take. Doing this in every room will save a lot of time. Mini-boss rooms work differently, and are much simpler. You'll always want to start by using your summon. There's a great guide by Satan is a Chill Guy, with setups for the mini-boss rooms that will consistently hit every enemy, as well as a newer setup for the 4 Witches mini-boss, both linked in the description. Once you use your meg, just focus down the mini-boss as quickly as you can, and you're done. Finally, there's bosses. Using a speed build will probably make these easier than you expect. So once you're comfortable, you'll want to start playing very aggressively to save time. Keep your damage up and don't be too scared to tank hits. Health is a resource, so use it, especially in the Hades fight. This isn't exactly an in-game optimization, but if you've taken a glance at the leaderboards, you might have noticed the subcategories named Unmodded and Modded. Modded refers to runs that use a speedrunning mod pack made by the leaderboard staff, which makes various changes related to quality of life, as well as lessening the impact of RNG, as voted for by the community. These include your first god always offering you all 4 core boons, being able to decide what your first hammer will be, being able to see fountains being offered on doors, removing the Barge of Death, Asterius, and Tiny Vermin mini-bosses, forcing the Satyr Sack and Styx to always appear in the second tunnel, and a quick reset button. None of these changes affect the skill involved in runs. They only make them less likely to be killed off by luck factors outside the player's control, and make grinding less irritating. Most speedrunners currently play modded. If you're on PC, it's worth considering, but whether you want the vanilla experience or one more optimized for running is up to you. If you want to try modded, there's a link to the mod pack in the description. It also contains instructions on installation. And that's it. Like I said earlier, this guide is just a starting point. There's huge amounts of information out there about speedrunning this game, and we're still figuring out new things all the time. If you want to learn more, or have anything you need to ask, I really recommend joining the Hades Speedrunning Discord, which is the top link in the description. There, you can see which of the many great players in the community are streaming at the moment. You can also post recordings of your own play for advice, which is a great way to improve. If you want to see more of me, I'm streaming on Twitch regularly, and I'd love to have you along. I'll also be posting more guides and other videos of my play on this channel, so subscribe if you want to see that. I want to give massive thanks to Risk13, who made a previous version of this guide and also helped me a lot with the script on this one. I also want to thank Bright01, Croven, Ghost, Kalobi, Museus, Ocaml, and Potato, who all helped with proofreading, editing, and other contributions, as well as Vorime, who recorded all the Hera footage. The Hades speedrunning community is the most helpful and supportive place I've ever been on the internet, and there's always someone to answer your questions or help you out. I'll be hoping to see you around there soon, but until then, good luck.